All right. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. We are live for the Conquering Cancer webcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. I am your host, Nathan Crane. I'm a certified holistic cancer coach. I'm the best-selling author of Becoming Cancer Free and the host and producer of Conquering Cancer, The Missing Link. I'm so excited you are joining us for this special free webcast that we're doing today with two world-renowned physicians, two people that I highly respect and look up to and have learned a lot from and have collaborated with over the years, and so grateful that they've taken time out of their incredibly busy schedules to be here and answer your questions. Dr. Dana Flavin and Dr. Joel Fuhrman. We're going to be covering a lot of the questions have come through. I think we've had 670 questions submitted ahead of time. And if you're joining us live below this video, you can submit questions there. I will pull from, many of them are similar questions. So we'll get to answer many of your questions all at the same time, which is great. And whether it's, the anti-cancer diet, lifestyle, solutions for prevention or healing, whatever your questions are, you can put them in the chat below this video. We'll get through as many as we can. As usual, this is not medical advice. This is informational only. If you need specific medical advice, you can reach out to either Dr. Fuhrman through his website or Dr. Flavin through hers. I will share those websites with you. Before we get into the webcast, if you're joining us live right now, I just want you to know this is the last chance to own the Conquering Cancer, the Missing Link series and DVDs at the discounted price. So if you want lifetime access to that, and also you get a buy one, get one free, we want to just help as many people as possible and get this information out to as many people as possible. You can do that. You should be able to do that on this page if you are logged onto the page watching this. So just wanted you to know this is the last chance at the discounted price. And without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. So we have Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who is a board-certified medical doctor. He is a family physician, 7-time New York Times best-selling author, and internationally recognized expert on nutrition and natural healing, and the founder and creator of the nutritarian diet. Dr. Fuhrman, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Also, we have Dr. Dana Flavin, who's an integrative medical doctor and published scientist with decades of hands-on experience working with cancer patients all over the world. She is the founder of the nonprofit ColMed, and so grateful she's here with us. Dr. Flavin, thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Good. So, I just want to dive right in. This is really a live Q&A. We have so many questions that have come through, and I am just going to moderate and bring in the questions, and we'll take turns answering. So David is asking, and a lot of people have asked this same question, what do you recommend as some of the best foods for cancer prevention? And Dr. Fuhrman, let's start with you.
Well, I think what we know that the scientific evidence has shown over and over again, that the same diet style that slows aging and promotes longevity, reducing heart attack, stroke, and dementia risk, also prevents cancer. There's not one diet to prevent heart disease, another diet to prevent dementia, another diet to prevent cancer. It's the same foods that slow aging and maximize human immune function. And I can also say that the same dietary portfolio that maximally prevents against cancer also and extends lifespan also is therapeutically effective for people with health challenges, to reverse diabetes, reverse heart disease, and extend lifespan and help the body fight and reverse cancer. And we have so the same diet that prevents cancer, reverse cancers. So I've had many patients, for example, with prostate cancer measured by their PSAs, where the PSAs are climbing and then the PSAs level off and go down. And the reason I'm mentioning prostate cancer is because it's so easy to track with a blood test, easier than other cancers. With the PSA is such an inexpensive and simple test to see it going back down when you change the diet. So I'm saying yes. The question is, what's the dietary portfolio or primary foods that prevent cancer? And I think there's pretty much agreement with most of scientists worldwide that we call it a plant-based diet because animal products, because of their pushing up of growth hormones, allow cancer cells to replicate. So we're having a diet that's either completely vegan or relatively low in animal products, but rich in these foods that have the phytochemicals and antioxidants that maximize human immune system. And I have that acronym GBOMBS, which you know, Nathan, is greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. And I could just say that in green vegetables, we use a combination of raw greens and cooked greens. And the raw greens or salad is a mixture of lettuce with raw cruciferous greens like arugula, watercress, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. We're talking here about kale. We're talking about the mixture of raw cruciferous with lettuce, because lettuce supplies a huge amount of beneficial nutrients. Lettuce is a superfood, and it's the richest source of sulfoquinavose, which sets the growth of the healthy bacteria, the gram-positives in the gut. And then the green cruciferous raw supply, when you chew them well, they form isothiocyanates in the mouth and produce more nitric oxide. And they are the foundational foods for building the gut, the GALT, the gut-associated lymphatic tissue. These intraepithelial lymphocytes that surround the digestive tract are fueled and how robustly protective against the things invading the body and protecting our immune system. These are built up in proportion to the green vegetables we eat. So greens first, and then onions and scallions and garlic are tremendously. These organosulfide compounds are critically important. Mushrooms have a huge amount of important material, including they have these antigen-binding lectins that actually stick to cell surfaces of cells that are abnormal, helping the immune system recognize cells that the immune system needs to attack to cause apoptotic or to kill abnormal cells. And there's an ergothioneine receptor on our cells that stabilize the DNA from the mushrooms are the nature's richest source of ergothioneine, where our body's been designed to utilize the protective effects of mushrooms in many ways. And then we're talking here about seeds like flax seeds and chia seeds, and that have tremendous effects on the lignins and substances that lower estrogen levels in the body and protect the breast against breast tissue against overestrogen stimulation. And then we're talking about other beans have beneficial effects like the inositol pentacus phosphate that doesn't allow tumor cells to replicate. And then lastly, berries, pomegranate, kumquats. We're talking about these low sugar fruits that are rich in flavonols and bioflavonoids that have anti-cancer and actually anti-diabetic effects, even though they taste sweet and things. So we're able to design a diet that's nutrient rich, protein adequate, and of course, we're trying to get the level of protein to be adequate for muscle growth and to sustain normal size, but not to lead to excessive growth. And lastly, we recognize that body fat is cancer-promoting tissue, and that in proportion to that you're overweight, you have more estrogen production and more inflammatory substances go up in the body, reactive oxygen species, cytokines and lipokines. The fat cells spew out immune suppressive substances, and we want to keep a woman's body fat below 25% and a male's body fat below 15%. I'm 69. My body fat is 11%. But I'm saying, as an example, and that people should generally be, most people across the board have excess body fat, and that's probably the most significant cancer-promoting substance they're consuming is their own body fat. And when they eat a diet and modulating these higher nutrient, lower calorie foods, eating lots of high calorie, lots of lower calorie food, asparagus and artichokes and eggplant and mushrooms and berries and salads, and we can modulate up those lower calorie foods, and we can control our level of more concentrated calories to make sure we don't get too thin. Carbohydrates and beans and nuts and seeds, which are all important, but we can modulate that. We can easily get ourselves at the optimal weight. We can eat a diet that's rich in nutrients. And I'm saying that we can win the war on cancer, which means to me, wiping out at least 90% of cancer across the modern world, at least 90%, because obviously even skin cancer is affected by what we eat, and even lung cancer from smoking cigarettes is still affected by what people eat. There's studies on that. In the Fiji Islands, they eat more green vegetables, and they have less lung cancer than the Hawaiian Islanders do, even though they don't smoke as much. They don't use much green vegetables, so they have higher rates of lung cancer with lower rates of smoking. So even smoking is affected by lung cancer. Even exposure to smoke. We know that first cancers that were ever talked about in enough number to be recognized in the 1600s, were that before we had much people getting breast cancer or prostate or colon cancer, the first cancers were scrotal cancers and testicular cancers found in men who worked as chimney sweeps because they were inhaling the polyaromatic hydrocarbons from smoke from cleaning out chimneys and expose their body. So I'm saying, even when you have an external source of cancer, even when you have a chemical, people are exposed to asbestos, or you still minimize the potential risk when your body has excellent nutrition and a strong immune function. It's not just the smoking or just the sun damage. It's also affected by the state of the host, the health of the host. That's a very quick overview and rough overview.
Thank you. That was great. That was a great overview. Dr. Flavin, anything you'd like to add or contribute to that?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's driving me crazy, and since I'm also the former top toxicology advisor to the Food and Drug Administration, I'm not real happy about the GMOs, the pesticides, all of the things in the water that are poisoning us, the endocrine disruptors that we're finding in the water, the plastics in the water, all the stuff that's in our water and our foods, including heavy metals, is one of the reasons that those tumor cells are having a hard time. And, it's absolutely correct. The proper diet without all the toxins and the poisons and everything else will reverse just about every cancer there is. In fact, I think the only ones that aren't reversed are ones that are just maybe concentrating on emotional damage, emotional problems, shock, losing a parent or child or something like that. But for all the other ones, he's absolutely correct. And the proper diet can make all the difference in the world. And I've seen several cases where people they gave up, the oncologist gave up, sent the patients home, said, well, nothing's working, nothing's helping. And one of them was actually a prostate cancer patient who went home, got on an all vegetarian diet, got on all, green leafies and so on, and all organic, and filtered his water and started exercising, and he's cancer free. And this is something that I know that a lot of my colleagues that are oncologists have it really hard to understand. How come this changing in lifestyle can actually reverse the cancer? But it's the bad things in the lifestyle that have caused it in the first place, plus the environmental factors. And these environmental factors are what I'm also trying to work on. And I'm actually working on a book to get all of this information out, because I figured I'm not going to live forever. And I want everybody to know what the devil I've learned, so that we can help colleagues and patients and everything else. And basically, it's clean up the water. Reverse osmosis is one excellent way. There are different filters that are excellent, etc. And then organic foods, etc. Even if you have your own vegetable garden and you're watering it with a hose, if you have fluoride in it, you're going to be altering your cells, and that will alter the basic water structure in a cell. So, and plus we have from the rainwater, we have tons of heavy metals coming in, and these heavy metals are also playing a role in our immune system and everything else. So yeah, diet is absolutely imperative, but a diet that is also toxin free, without the plastics, without the pesticides, without the GMOs. It's not easy. It's really not easy. And I know that a lot of patients have problems because they say, well, I can only get 20% or 30% organic or whatever. And these are the difficulties that I'm seeing. But in the long run, I agree that if you have a majority of your food that's based on natural foods and fruits, vegetables, etc., that are anti-cancer, even if you are contaminated partially with some of the toxins and the poisons in our foods, etc., you can still keep your cancer levels down. You can still work on reversing your cancers. So that's brilliant. And it's something that I don't think anybody that was in pharmacology or biochemistry or oncology could even fathom 20, 30 years ago. And now we know, because we're seeing it.
Absolutely. I want to stay on diet for a little bit. We've got questions about other aspects of health and healing as well, mental, emotional, we'll get to. But back to you, Dr. Fuhrman. Elaine is asking, since sugar feeds cancer, is it wise to eliminate or reduce fruit and grains?
Well, we're modulating the food in our diet to be maximally lifespan enhancing. So we certainly wouldn't want to be on a fruitarian diet, or diet that's mostly fruit, because because fruit is the only plant food that's lower in protein. The other plants are more protein rich. So like saying here, like green vegetables are high in protein, grains are relatively higher in protein, and nuts and seeds and beans and are protein rich plant foods. So if we have too much fruit in our diet, we're going to lower the protein quality of our diet. So we want fruit to be a reasonable amount. But it's free sugar that's mostly detrimental to cancer. Free sugar is sugar that's not bound to fiber, not bound to the matrix of the food, because most of the sugars we're giving people with fruit, the fiber and the sugar complex promote the growth of good bacteria in the gut, which then slow the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream. And we're using fruit with a relatively low glycemic meal. We're not eating like 6 pieces of fruit. We're eating 1 or 2 pieces of fruit on a meal composed of vegetables and eggplant and beans and nuts. So overall, you're looking at the glycemic effect of the whole meal, which is relatively favorable. And the Women's Healthy Eating and Living Study and other studies have shown that vegetables as a whole, particularly green vegetables, show the most protection against cancer. But diets that include vegetables and fruit are more protective against cancer than diets that contain vegetables without fruit. What I'm saying right now is that nutritional diversity in a diet adds to the completeness of the immune system, because we've learned now even the billions of bacteria that live in the gut give us a more diversity of the microbiome with different fibers we're consuming. So by adding nutritional variety, different types of green vegetables, different types of mushrooms, adding different types of carbohydrates, spaghetti squash and beans and even soybean, different types of seeds and nuts, variety, and adding different types of fruits in our diet too. When you exclude a category like fruit, you're not improving immune function. You're actually taking away from the advantage you would be getting by including those foods. That said, we do recommend people limit dried fruit, dates, and overeating fruit, and using more of the berries, kumquats, melons, pomegranate, other fruits that are relatively lower in sugar, and not overdoing that, especially if people have a metabolic hindrance to weight loss, they're overweight. So we don't want them to make sure. So yes, there's an advantage to watching sugar, not using honey, not using maple syrup, getting used to having fruit as the major source of sweet in your diet, and of course, not overdoing the fruit to then exclude the higher protein plants like greens and beans and nuts and seeds.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I think the problem with sugar, the sugar conversation in cancer is you'll hear someone, a so-called health expert online say, oh, sugar causes cancer, so avoid all sugar. And then you throw the baby out with the bathwater. You throw out the good sugars as well as the bad sugars. And so people automatically assume, oh, I can't eat berries, I can't eat fruit that all has sugar. And that's absolutely not the case. And the studies have confirmed this, right? That yes, you want to throw out the processed sugar, the high glycemic sugar, the sugars that comes in bottles and packages and packets that's processed, as you called it, the free sugar, right? Free from its fiber. Because
including honey and maple syrup. I'm including honey and maple syrup as a bad sugar,
And so because when there's fructose and glucose in the fruit, as you said, it's bound to the fiber. So number one, you're not going to have an insulin response as if it was just, taken out of the fiber. It's a slow response, which is what you want, which is still going to contribute to insulin sensitivity, which is what you want. But it also has phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, anti-cancer molecules and properties, antioxidants, helps fight off free radicals, right? Helps prevent cellular damage. All of those things you get from fruit and berries, and certainly higher vitamin content of specific vitamins and fruits that aren't necessarily in certain vegetables or beans or things like that, which is why the diversity is really important. So what you're saying and what we tell people based on that as well is have some fruit, have some berries, but sparingly, and eat them fresh, or put them in a blender, a smoother, and drink them. But don't be afraid of fruit. Just don't eat, 10 pieces of fruit a day. Maybe you eat 2 or 3 or 4 pieces throughout the day.
Right, exactly. I do recommend people use frozen fruit. I have nothing, especially frozen wild blueberries and frozen blackberries, which have very powerful anti-cancer effects. As a matter of fact, the wild blueberries and blackberries are shown in scientific studies to actually cause reversal of cancer. They have studies on precancerous esophageal cancers and throat cancers, where they have precancerous conditions where they use those type of cancers because scientists can put a scope in your throat and take a little biopsy or scraping, and they can see if the cancer is getting worse or getting better. And they even find things like just taking some blackberry powder in a capsule has caused reversal of these cancers to occur in the throat. So where the throat becomes a measurement of a precancerous or cancerous condition. But so yes, what we're saying here is that these black or colorful plants with lots of surface area and skin, with lots of dark flavonoids in the skin, actually have powerful anti-cancer effects.
Anything you want to add there, Dr. Flavin, especially on the question around grains? They're also asking about grains.
Well, yeah, first I just want to say he just described my lunch. I have frozen organic blueberries in my freezer, and I throw them in with some bananas and walnuts, and I also have some clementine in the living room, and the white part around the clementine is actually also anti-cancer. And I had to laugh. My name is Flavin, and I'm born under the sign of Cancer, and it's kind of like God has a sense of humor. I have to honestly say it's very ironic. Now, as far as grains go, yeah, this is something that the lentils particularly I find very, very interesting because they're very helpful. And I look at some of the diets. I have friends also from India, for example, or from North Africa that eat a lot of different grains, couscous and lentils and so on. And it's such a healthy diet because the thing is you're getting the protein, but you're also getting all the nutrients that go. There's so many different nutrients from these different lentils and grains that it's extremely helpful. The thing that I say, is to avoid white flour and wheat flour. Because according to Professor Del Bueno, who gave a talk on this, and he said that the white flour and the wheat flour has been altered by over the years in order to make it stronger and more resistant to all sorts of problems in growing, but at the expense of increasing insulin growth factor. So he said that the normal white flours actually will increase insulin growth factor and stimulate tumor growth. But the ancient grains, the spelt and the let me think.
Kamut.
Kamut, quinoa. Oh God.
Amaranth.
Yeah, amaranth is one that I always forget, and then buckwheat and so on. It's just amazing how helpful they are, and all of the rye and so on. But the ancient grains, and not the ones, and they have to be organic because they otherwise they put in, I forgot what it was that they put in there. You probably know better than I do right now, where they make the flour where it's easier to filter, but it messes up your thyroid.
Sodium bromate.
Yes, thank you. Right. But this
And they
is
also spray pesticides, right? Not only growing it, but then also right at the end to
right.
Before they
Give it longer shelf life. Yeah. But just I don't think people were clear, Dr. Flavin, that your name Flavin is the beginning of the word flavonoid. Just want to make it so. I got that, but I didn't know that everybody else got that. That flavonoids are these rich anti-cancer substances in colorful plants. And of course, your name is Flavin.
it's to me, it's so ironic that when I started out, I wasn't going into cancer. I was actually in viruses. But then later on, as I became more and more into the science and the research and stuff, the other diseases were easy. I mean, autoimmune disease takes 4 weeks and you put it in remission. Viral diseases like Epstein-Barr, mononucleosis, or glandular fever, that can be reversed in 4 weeks from hepatosplenomegaly. And I did that in the 90s, and it was like, that was so easy. But cancer was the most fascinating because there were so many parameters that went along with it that you needed to know. You needed to know about toxins and carcinogens, and then about foods and about diet and exercise and emotion. And it was like, wham, just a myriad of things. So that's why I stayed in the cancer research, because it was the most challenging. And when I started reversing stage 4 cancers in patients, I was really flabbergasted because I didn't think it was possible. And when I saw them reversing through diet, through exercise, through nutrient supplements and so on, off-label drugs, I was floored. I was really floored. And I thought, wow, you know what? That we have a whole new world out there to help these patients. And the basics of it all, of course, what you're saying is diet, nutrition, and lifestyle. Very, very imperative.
Right. I have four patients. I couldn't call them patients anymore because I haven't seen them in 15, 20 years, but I have four cases of ovarian cancer that had spread through the body. One woman had 4 liters of fluid extracted from her lung so these four cases now have been survived more than 25 years after a diagnosis of metastatic ovarian cancer. And I think that's
bravo. That's not only remarkable. Usually they say, oh, you have 1 or 2 years, that's it, go home and put your things in order.
Yeah.
And when I hear this and when I see it in other patients, I have a friend that his wife had ovarian cancer. They told her at the hospital she had 1 year to live, and he started reading books on nutrition and exercise and so on. I can't remember what was the first book that he read, but he's a physicist. He didn't know anything about this stuff, but he started reading these books, and then he told his wife she had to change her diet and she couldn't have any more sugar and so on and so forth, and pure sugar, and got her on exercising and so on. So after the first year, she was still alive, and the hospital was quite surprised. Second year, still alive. Third year, fourth year, it just went on year after year. And this is something where the hospital was like, oh well, we you're just an exception. But he tried to tell them, no, she's not an exception. All of this diet and change and exercise and so on and so forth, this is what's putting her in remission and keeping her in remission. But they said they can't do it because they have their protocols that they're allowed to give, and that's it.
Yeah. Oh, and I also wanted to add that I consider white flour to be a sugar equivalent, that there's no really biochemical difference to the body between eating white sugar and white flour. And so that has definitely immune suppressive effects and cancer promoting effects. So we're lumping that in. But even the biochemical effect, how fast it's absorbed, we're talking about the glycemic load of white flour is the same as sugar. The glycemic load means how fast the glucose enters the bloodstream. And it's that spike in glucose in the bloodstream that makes for a spike in insulin as the growth promoting hormone. And the insulin hormone promotes angiogenesis, which then allows cancer cells to replicate. You don't get that kind of spike. So that's what we're talking about. We're just making it clear we're talking about sugar and flour as being negatives, whereas berries wouldn't have that huge load of sugar in the bloodstream. They would just maintain you at the low level of glucose to maintain your energy level without without excessive production of insulin.
Absolutely. A lot of my friends use things like chickpeas for flour and things along that line, even lupina for flour, where they mix that in with their buckwheat or their rye or whatever else they're using, but they avoid the white flour. You're absolutely correct. And I tell my patients this too, the same thing. Don't, stay away from the white flour, stay away from the white bread, do organic and go for the ancient grains.
Yeah. And when, Nathan, I think you'll like this concept is that when you empower people with hope, because keep in mind, Dr. Flavin just said the person goes to their oncologist and they tell them they have 6 months or 12 months to live. That's already exciting their fear. And, so now when they have something they can do, eat organically, grow Mayway kumquats for the lemonine and eating vegetable juices and the mushroom salads, and when they start to be able to take control of their health destiny and communicate with people who've done well doing this, and it gives them more hope, and that gives them more positive emotional psychology because they're doing something proactive to improve their health. And whether they can beat their cancer or just survive longer with cancer or just prevent recurrence of the cancer, whatever it is, they're going to have much better outcomes and be happier too, because they're not just sitting there waiting to die. They're doing something positively for themselves and for their community.
So 100%. And, anytime that you can be proactive and take action towards your own health and take your health into your own hands and have something to look forward to and work towards every day, it gives you that self-empowerment, which a cancer patient absolutely needs, because so often, you as a patient give your power over to the expert in the white lab coat, and and they tell you, oh, diet doesn't mean anything. I mean, we have comments and questions that have come in on this for this webcast. It's like, yeah, my oncologist told me diet doesn't do anything for cancer. If it did, everybody would change their diet. It's like, well, yeah, the problem is you don't know.
Thanks. Thank you.
I mean, if you want to talk about ignorance, right? And not ignorant, I'm not, shaming them, saying they're stupid. I'm saying ignorance in the fact they just don't know what they don't know. They don't realize, that diet, that's exactly what everyone should be doing, is changing their diet.
Right. The number one cause of death is still for adult Americans is still heart attacks and strokes, and that doesn't have to happen, and people don't change their diet there either. The whole thing is insanity.
Well, and heart attacks. So, heart disease and heart attacks are the number one killer of cancer patients who have lived beyond 10 years as well. So
exactly, the number one cause of death in men with prostate cancer is heart attacks.
Right, and so and it's the same, diet and lifestyle changes. If you're going to address heart disease, it's the same thing you're going to address cancer.
So tell them diet doesn't matter. Just go on to your death. Just die 10 or 20 years prematurely. It's like
great. I mean, imagine being told that by your oncologist. Like, diet doesn't matter, but take these drugs. These will, destroy your immune system and maybe help you. We don't know. Like, what? It's crazy. So going back real quick, Valteam, who's on our live chat, is asking, why no honey for the anti-cancer diet? Why, Dr. Fuhrman, why do you recommend no honey?
Well, because we're discussing here that the glycemic load of the food, and which has, of course, honey and maple syrup flooded to the bloodstream with a huge flood of glucose into the bloodstream, higher levels that you can achieve with fruit. And then you have excess insulin production. But also there's sugar without the fibers, flavonoids, and other phytochemicals that are associated with sugar in fruit that cause the sugars and the calories to not be absorbed into the bloodstream, but to fuel the growth of bacteria in the gut. So we have a completely different biological effect from eating oil from a walnut oil compared to a walnut, are completely different biological effects. And honey from eating sugar from an apple or a kiwi is completely different. And honey and maple syrup is a negative sugar because they flood the body with excess glucose without that level of nutrients and the food matrix that makes the energy and the nutrients fuel bacteria and slow the absorption of glucose into the guts, into the digestive, into the bloodstream. So actually nutrients move in both directions. Nutrients move from the digestive tract into the bloodstream and from the bloodstream into the digestive tract. They move actually in both directions.
Now, would you say, so the thing about honey, yes, right? You're going to have a higher insulin response. You're going to have more of a bolus of,
of glucose in the bloodstream and a higher insulin response.
So we know that, but we also know honey has like tremendous health benefits, right? I mean, it's anti-inflammatory, it's high antioxidants, it helps boost the immune system, it helps with respiratory, it's a natural antibiotic, right? Like there's so many health benefits. Does it like weigh out, like if you have a little bit of honey, are you going to get the benefits? I guess, do the negative outweigh the benefits or vice versa?
I'm not agreeing with the points you just made. I'm saying honey has in vitro, in other words, in a petri dish, it has antibacterial, has those effects,
yep.
And on a skin wound, yes, external to the body. But once you put all that sugar internal to the body, it suppresses immunity. The high level of sugar and high level of insulin causes glucose uptake, fat uptake, suppresses immune function, suppresses natural killer T cells. I don't think eating, and also it's a calorically concentrated food. It's a high concentration of sugar. So I don't think those lab effects on bacteria and it's just those are marketing things that people use to say why honey is a health food. But I don't think honey adds quality to the diet, because if you had that same amount of calories from a whole natural food with fiber and nutrients and phytochemicals, the beneficial content of honey, the nutrient content of honey, is insignificant compared to fruit, berries, kumquats, persimmons, kiwis. It's insignificant level of nutrients in there, an insignificant amount of the fiber. Then the nutrient ratio compared to the sugar and calorie ratio is very, very poor. And I would say it's more, we put in the category of disease promotion compared to disease reversal. It's more of a disease promoting food than a disease reversal food. Doesn't mean that you can't put honey on a wound and it's not going to help lower bacterial counts or something, or it can't soothe your throat if you have a cough, but it's still not a good food to eat.
Interesting. Yeah. So you're saying
I'm not on the same direction, actually. I do see that Manuka honey, maybe once a week, not every day, not all the time, etc. But Manuka honey has really tremendous antibacterial properties, and I do allow once in a while Manuka honey, but not the other ones, and not the ones that are all just sugar substitutes, basically, because a lot of these are processed, a lot of these are cooked, and they've dissolved any of the health advantages and so on and so forth. But I agree that a high sugar content of the honey is a problem. Manuka honey once in a while, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, a little bit in your tea, but not on an everyday basis, etc., is in my opinion not going to be enough. That's going to be a massive challenge to your glycemic index.
Yeah, so sparingly, if you do use it, if your main concern is cancer, maybe consider cutting it down.
Moderation. Yeah, moderation.
Moderation to every person is something different. And also, I'm not, people can have different opinions, but I'm trying to, go with what evidence we have available, go with the preponderance of evidence. And we can't have it both ways. We can't saying a high glycemic insulin level being high is bad, yet insulin level raising from honey is not bad. If it raises your insulin level that high, it's not good. And we shouldn't be doing that in cancer patients. So I don't want to give people a confusing answer to this. If you do something once in a while, it's not going to hurt you, but it's not, whatever you do once in a while is not going to be that bad, but it's not something that's favorable for a person with cancer.
Okay, I hear you. We were on a little bit of a different page, but nonetheless, I understand exactly what you're saying. However, I think that with a little bit of Manuka honey once in a while, and I mean a little bit, and not overkill and a huge amount on, in whatever you're eating, drinking, or whatever the heck. It's the same thing that I see with carrots. A lot of my patients don't want to do carrot juice, and yet carrots have ruthenium in them, which will actually heal damaged DNA. That's published, and we also know that the beta carotene inhibits the BCL2 gene, the gene that protects the tumor cells. So that's kind of nice about the carrots, and how there's actually books written on carrots reversing cancers. And at first I used to think they were nuts until I started reading about the genes, that the BCL2 gene and how beta carotene blocks it, and how the ruthenium in the carrots, in the a lot of root plants, but in particularly in carrots, has anti-cancer property. When I was out in California in 1980 with Linus Pauling and Dr. Livingston, she was doing very, very well with her cancer patients, and also having them have carrot juice every day with red beet, and we'd throw in a red beet and some celery and some ginger, and parsley. I put parsley in it now too, and sometimes my patients put in broccoli sprouts because they're the highest in the sulforaphanes, and that works relatively well too in their juicing. Now, I don't know what you think about juicing and about carrots.
Well, now you're speaking my language here, because you just described because the carotenoid and phytochemical level in the body, mine might be high because I've been eating this way for 30 years, but another person may take a year to get it up or 2 years to get it up, and I can't wait 2 years to get their phytochemical and carotenoid levels up. So the juicing enables me to, in 3 months, to get their levels much higher faster. And I call it a 3-part juice, which has the ingredients you mentioned. It has one third carrot and beet, and 1/3 cruciferous greens, predominantly bok choy, because bok choy has more fluid and it's hard to juice a lot of from kale and other things. So and then we use 1/3 lettuce and celery. So we actually and the reason why we don't do all cruciferous is because we don't want to do too much cruciferous. Over a certain amount of juice can actually have negative effects on the thyroid, but you have to give a huge amount. So we're getting, and too much all carrot can give you a little more sugar than you would need. But we get the 1/3. So we're talking about one juice twice a day, and we're about a 7 to 9 ounce glass. They're getting 3 ounces of each section of the juice. And then, of course, we're using sprouts like broccoli sprouts and other, particularly to increase the isothiocyanates, because, as you know, broccoli sprouts are the richest source of sulforaphane, which is an isothiocyanate too. So yes, those are the type of things we're adding to get their levels of nutrients more than adequate to an excellent level as quickly as we can.
I'm assuming you put olive oil in it.
No, I do not.
You
So
can't absorb beta carotene without fat.
yes, because we're using we're using flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp
Oh,
seeds,
I see. Okay.
walnuts. We're using the whole food, which gives us more anti-cancer lignans and anti-cancer benefit than just
Right.
taking the oil, which doesn't have all those lignans. You know,
No, we just use or we use an organic fresh virgin olive oil, like a teaspoon of it, in each glass, so that they then when they take curcumin and Boswellia serrata, they absorb that too, because that needs fat to absorb. So that seems to work both, both for the beta carotene as well as for the curcumin and the Boswellia.
well, I do something similar to that. I do something similar in that I'm recommending people use the green tea, the sertine, the green tea extract with the curcumin, the turmeric extracts. We use black turmeric, and we use also obviously using like natural forest mushrooms and things. But yes, but we're using a half an ounce of nuts and seeds with every meal to facilitate the absorption of those compounds, because the nuts and seeds have more anti-cancer benefits themselves than the same amount of calories from oil from that same amount of fat calories from oil. So a little bit different, but the same principles. We're using the similar
Yeah.
principles.
I would say Joel's a bit of a Puritan when it comes to food, like to an extreme and to a degree. Like if you want to get the best results from your food, the nutritarian diet that he puts his patients through, it's everything to a T, thought through, hardcore based on science with lots of case studies and evidence. Where if you can get if you can get 10 or 20% more benefit by having this nut or this seed and getting rid of this oil or whatever it is, he will recommend and do that, because that 10 or 20% or 30% more benefit is going to help that patient even more, right? So I love that. And you do the same thing, Dr. Flavin. You do the same thing with your patients. You're always looking for, all right, what do we need to do between this compound and that compound and this food to get the best results? And Dr. Fuhrman has spent decades with figuring out this diet for his patients and seeing incredible results. So actually, one of the books that we cook from is the Eat to Live cookbook. That's yours, Dr. Fuhrman. That's a great. If people want to learn how to cook this way without using excessive heated oils and vegetable oils, without using processed sugars and things like that, use a lot of fruits and things for the natural sweetness, for dressings and for sauces, and all of that works really great. We make a lot of dishes that are delicious from your cookbooks. So those are, something I always recommend to people.
Thank you. And I'm trying to make sure we're modulating muscle, bone strength, body fat. We're trying to get the ideal body construction going into and so in other words, not have fat, flabby, out of shape bodies, but try to get the person more physically fit and with lower body fat. And what I'm saying here is that sugar, oil, and salt are appetite stimulants. And people are so indoctrinated to chronically overeating and eating too many calories that these rapidly absorbed calories are brain stimulating foods, and they prevent people from losing weight. So it's not. So yeah, I mean, LeBron James could eat a little bit more olive oil or something, but he's burning. Professional athletes like professional tennis players can eat, but people who are overweight with trouble losing weight, they're not that physically active. We want to be more careful with their choice of calories, just because we don't want to give them appetite, concentrated calories that rush in the bloodstream real fast, that stimulate the brain to eat more food and they retard weight loss. In other words, the push the insulin up and push the fat storage hormones up, and then then it's harder to lose weight. So, I need to perfect it to a degree to see results, and seeing results, and also sees results that the person is losing at least 2 to 3 pounds a week as well.
Well, the food addiction is very real, right? I mean, not only processed foods, but once in a while I'll go eat at like an Indian restaurant or a Thai food restaurant or something like that, and get the plant-based option, have some tofu, vegetables. But I know that I've looked at their sauces and stuff. I know it's not always the best ingredients, the best oils, the best sweeteners, which is why we don't eat out that often, but once in a while we will. And I went out to dinner the other day with a friend who is, who has had history of food addiction and was, 100 pounds overweight, and he's kept that weight off for quite a long time, but he's very focused on, a very clean, simple, plant-based diet most of the time. But he wanted, I helped him move in. He wanted to go move into his house, and we wanted to go celebrate. So we went to an Indian food restaurant, and he doesn't eat like that. And so with all the flavors and spices and salt and oils and sugars and stuff that they put in the food. And so he ate, and I didn't see him for the past week, and I just saw him today, and he comes and he goes, I've been on a food binge since we last ate. Today was my last day getting off the food binge. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, I've been eating that way for the whole past week. I was like, man, so that was your trigger. Like that set you down that path. You have
Yes.
This is the perfect combination of oil, salt, and sugar that
Right.
makes your neurochemistry and your physiology, your biology addicted to that food. And if you have a tendency towards food addiction, it's like you can't stop eating it. So it's like he's just eating it all week. And he's like, I feel terrible. So now I'm done. But
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
No, I'm like,
But it's such an important point you're making, because that's the right, like you or I or Dr. Flavin could go and have something that, like a little oil or a little bit of this or a little bit of that, even a little bit of, and not going to be a big deal. But for some of these food addicts who have so much trouble with losing weight, and they're controlling their control with their emotional aspect of food and their dopamine sensitivity to food, if they go have these things like we're talking about, it could trigger them. It makes it harder for them. It's like an alcoholic having a little bit of alcohol. You could have a glass of wine a couple of times a month. You're not going to be drinking all week, all month long. But a person who has that problem, it could trigger them to. So that I'm working in that field of dealing with people who are overweight and have trouble following the program. They know what they're supposed to eat, but they can't do it. And that by having more, it seems like I'm so rigid and so, aggressively perfectionism. But I'm saying that the outcome for these people who are triggered by a little bit of cheats or a little bit of these foods, it works better with these people having clear boundaries, and staying within those boundaries help them stick and continue to progress. And they see the magical health benefits that occur when they are doing it as strict as what other people would say, oh, Dr. Fuhrman's too radical. But I see over the years that these people with food issues do better when they have these clear boundaries.
I think that's a good point, because with alcohol, right? For example, as an addiction, if you are alcoholic, if you have the neurochemistry of an alcoholic, you have one drink and you cannot stop, right? This used to be me when I was a teenager. This is a lot of people in my family have this. They have one drink and they can't stop, and all of a sudden, weeks later, they're drinking a fifth of vodka a day, every day. They quit their job, and I've seen it again and again and again and again. I'm helping another family member through this right now. And I realized this years ago, so I just said, no more alcohol. I will never have a drop of alcohol again. And I haven't for years, and I have no desire to. But other people can have a drink, a few times a month, like you said, and never have a problem with it. Well, it's the same with food. So I guess it's for each individual to figure out, do you have an addicted personality or addictive tendency towards whatever that thing is? Is it sugar? Is it food? Is it whatever? And so if you have that one cheat meal, all of a sudden you end up like my friend, a whole week down this deep rabbit hole of sugar and sweets and salts and oils. And it just took you off of that whole month of a good track that you've been on, which is why you're saying, look, if you have a tendency, you're better not doing a cheat meal. You're better not doing these things. You're better staying more rigid and specific, which makes sense to me as someone who dealt with alcoholism in the past, who said, I will just never have another drink of alcohol, plain, period. I don't have any room for, I don't negotiate on that. That's non-negotiable for me. And I think for some people, you may have to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I agree with both of you. And the thing is that one of the things that I was looking at years ago also was the high fructose corn syrup, which alters your leptins and ghrelins in your gastrointestinal tract, so that if you have it, and I actually went through this. I was down in the town, and I had not had any breakfast. I often forget to eat. I just go into my own whatever, and I saw a restaurant. Well, it's not a restaurant. It's kind of a place that has coffee and stuff. But I shan't mention the name. But I went in and I bought a chai tea. Big mistake. Right. Big mistake. Full of high fructose corn syrup. For 3 days, I was always hungry. For 3 days, I could not believe it. And I still didn't binge out or eat a lot of food, but I found it really strange that I was so hungry. And then it was like, Dana, hello, you wrote an entire article on high fructose corn syrup, and you know exactly what it does to mess up your entire gastrointestinal system. So that's one problem. I've actually designed, and I'm hoping that I can get it tested out. Believe it or not, a pill that raises your dopamine, raises your serotonin, raises everything that alcohol raises without giving you alcohol. And I want to test it out because I'm calling it high five. And I thought, well, this is great. This is something that people, I think that a lot of people that have food addiction or alcohol addiction, it's a deficiency in one of their neurotransmitters or maybe several of their neurotransmitters that they need to readjust and reset. And so once they reach a point where they do actually have something they're not supposed to have, all of a sudden they get a dopamine high and it's like, oh, I want that high again, et cetera, or serotonin. And I think that our gastrointestinal bacteria, and correct me on this, colleague, our gastrointestinal bacteria also plays a big role in this. And so when our GI bacteria is screwed up, then our brains are not functioning with the normal dopamine, serotonin, and so on. And I think this is what some of these food addictions are, because they've been contaminated, perhaps as children, eating lousy food, eating lots of chemicals, and so on and so forth, that really messed up the gastrointestinal bacteria. Or they were introduced to sugar from very early ages on. Like my German mother-in-law, who lived next to one of the big chocolate factories in Germany. And every holiday, that woman had so much chocolate. My daughter, I mean, she has to keep away from all this stuff because she can't even get started on it. And she's a chemist. So she's like, oh gosh, Mom, I can't eat this. And this is something where she now, as a mother, is watching her child, that he's not getting lots of sugar and that he's staying away from it. And most of these chocolate bars and candy and all the rest of this stuff now have, unfortunately, high fructose corn syrup in it because it's cheaper. And this is a nightmare. And this is something I look at it and I think to myself, well, let me ask your opinion on this, both of you. I do allow my patients to have cocoa. Okay, for example, they can have dark chocolate without sugar and mix in a little erythritol. And then what I tell them to do is just put it over a double boiler, put in a little bit of erythritol, and then throw in some toasted almonds. And have that once in a while, not all the time, but once in a while, if they feel like they need something that is sinful. And so this is something that I've been recommending once in a while, not every day and not tons and so on, but no sugar in it, just erythritol or stevia. What do you think?
I think, but what we found, and also I think the research indicates that the non-calorie sweeteners perpetuate people's sugar addiction and desire to eat sweets. So I think that like the cocaine addicts, my center here in San Diego is set up so people have enforced abstinence from
Right.
from concentrated sugars, including low-calorie sweeteners. And like a cocaine rehab center, they keep people in the facility for 3 months because if even a month of no cocaine, they're still going to have the brain crave it. So every time you
What
give
about stevia and erythritol?
yes, that's what I'm saying. Every time you give them stevia and erythritol, you're then perpetuating the neurological stimulants for sugar. And then you perpetuate the cravings, you're back to now square one with having to go 3 months again of getting off sugar again. So to a degree, you're perpetuating the person's desire and they're for concentrated substances. These people now they are not satisfied with an apple or some frozen cherries. They have to have something more concentrated, chocolate. No, now I'm not anything. We can make a cocoa chocolate cake. We can make something with cocoa powder and some. I'd rather use as a sweetener to use something like some pineapple in with the cocoa or something, or But anyway, we use carrots, beets. We use a chocolate cake out of carrots and beets and nuts with cocoa powder with a little pineapple in there for sweetener. It's not as sweet as a regular cake. But it's not the cocoa that's the amount. But when you're using a concentrated sweetener,
okay, I hear
we're
you.
still trying to make things not that sweet, because to the degree of sweetness, it's the Brix level or degree of sweetness to the brain still perpetuates the desire to have sweetened substances. And over time, we can have people be satisfied with things that are not that sweet if they go for a long time with a lower levels of sugar in their diet.
Do you think the dates have too much sugar? because I don't let my patients have dates.
I think that it depends if they're, I think too many dates could be a negative. But when we're making a dessert, a sweetened dessert, we sometimes do use dates in the dessert. We use half a date per serving per person. So
Oh, that's perfect.
one medjool date may be for, we might use 5 dates for 10 people, in other words, for the
Right.
dessert. And we're making
Okay.
some kind of healthy dessert as a sweetener.
Good,
And because,
thank
of
you.
course, the date has been shown to, even though it has the same amount of sugar, it's not free sugar, it's bound sugar. And of course, you have the glycemic load is still less. And because we don't forget, you're utilizing some of that glucose as a fuel for bacteria in the gut because of the growth of fiber in the gut. So you're not getting the same response of how much sugar comes into the bloodstream. But in any case, I'm saying that even with erythritol, stevia, and xylitol, even though they're not caloric and not dangerous, and monk fruit, even monk fruit, we still want things not to be so overly sweet. If you're going to use some of that, still use a little bit of that so that the substance you're eating is not too sweet, because you're still pushing up the person's desire for us to have something that's sweet, and it perpetuates that. So we're still have to watch those things.
Okay, interesting. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's basically like how I think of it is, I think the first like detox cleanse I did was a 5-day master cleanse. And that was in like 2007. And then from there, I did detoxes and cleanses, probably a couple a year, tried different ones throughout the years. And the more that I cleaned my body, the more that I would take breaks from processed things and highly sugary, salty, oily things. It's like all of a sudden I would eat a carrot or an apple or celery, and the flavor was so robust and it was so nourishing, which is still true to this day, right? I can, if I want something really sweet, I used to, years ago, I would go get a jar of ice cream and eat the whole jar of ice cream, but now it's like I'll go have a banana and I'll put some almond butter on there and have some almond milk, and it's like incredibly satiating. Or I'll eat an apple, or I'll eat some dates, for example, right? Like dates are probably the most sweetest thing that I'll have for the most part. I do honey in my tea, but it's a different story. We're talking here primarily for cancer patients, but I just don't crave those really, really sweet things like I used to. And a lot of that is as you clean up your diet and you eat more health foods, and you talk a lot about this, Dr. Fuhrman, is your brain starts to adapt and look forward to those foods because they are nourishing, they're fulfilling your body. And that's what our body needs. And so the things that used to taste terrible, actually taste good. I can eat raw broccoli, and I'll dip in a little bit of hummus and it's amazing. 15 years ago, I wouldn't touch broccoli. So it's amazing how our bodies adapt over time, but we have to stop eating those fast food, those processed food, those highly sugar, highly salty, sweet foods, because we just get so addicted to them. And that's all we're doing is, buying the yachts for the billionaires of those companies that could care less about our health.
True.
Well, that's the good point you're making too, is that number one is that people's taste preferences change. And just to reinforce that, because people could be listening to us speak and they're thinking, oh yeah, they're speaking about such healthy eating, but that's who wants to live like that. It's not going to be any fun, and you can't enjoy food anymore. It's taking everything away that tastes good. And I'm saying that your taste buds get stronger, you build more taste muscle, and we teach people great, delicious recipes to make the healthy foods taste great too. And we find that people aren't getting a low amount of pleasure. They're highly satisfied and getting lots of pleasure from eating, even though the diet sounds so restrictive and so strict, with the creativity in the desserts and the creativity in the dressings and the Thai curry sauce and all the different ways we're making vegetables and the salad dressings that are healthy, made from nuts and seeds. So people's taste buds acclimate, they learn the recipes, and they can enjoy eating this way. They don't feel they're overly deprived.
Yeah. So I want to just shift gears real quick as we kind of come towards the end of this webcast. And we had a lot of questions come in about stress and cancer specifically. And so I'll ask both of you this question. We'll start with you, Dr. Flavin, and then you, Dr. Fuhrman. How does stress affect cancer?
Well, the stress increases cortisol and increases the acidity in the body. So you have more acid in your body, and you have cortisol lowering your immune system and stimulating tumor growth. So it's a double negative. And this is something where this is why I recommend to my patients that they learn to relax, to meditate, to exercise, to all the things that will help to lower their cortisol levels. Even breathing helps to release stress. And I never thought of that before until I started seeing how it changes pH too. So shortness of breath, panic attacks, et cetera, increase cortisol, increase acid in the body, increase tumor growth, lower your immune system. So this is where the stress story. I have many patients that come to me and they got cancer from stress situations at work or family or relationships or whatever. And these constant stress situations can, I mean, they wear the patients out, they lower their immune system. And this is something where they really need to work on this through multiple ways. Some of them do EMDR to get rid of some of the traumas that they've had. Some of them have had to leave their jobs and get new jobs in places where they were relaxed and it was just, they weren't under all that stress situations. One lady ended up getting rid of her cancer by divorcing her husband. Now that sounds crazy, but she was so stressed by him, and he was mean basically, and she did, and her cancer went away. And she said, "Well, that was easy." And I said, "Well, it's not that easy for everybody, but everyone has different stress situations, and that's where you have to learn to kind of relax, meditate, sing, beat drums, watch happy movies." Stop getting lost into negatives, et cetera. And then again, as Dr. Fuhrman pointed out, when you've got an oncologist that says, "Oh, you've got 3 months to live," or something like that. I mean, how the devil are you going to get out of stress there until you realize, from what we're all saying, and we're all working with cancer patients, that this is not the case. And so don't let somebody bury you prematurely just by stressing you. Okay, all of these things are reversible. And because we've seen so many patients that have gone into remission and stayed in remission, we know this now. And this is, I think, the important point to let all the patients know, hey, you know what? It's not, don't start panicking yourself. These are all reversible. It's step after step. It's a little bit of change in lifestyle, change in diet, change in what you're doing, where you are, and basic factors like that. And then you can lower your cortisol level. I also give rhodiola rosea sometimes to lower cortisol levels, or ashwagandha for the adrenal glands, because that seems to stabilize them for a while they're working on getting rid of all the stress and everything else in their lives. So these are additional kind of support systems that will help them.
Beautiful. Anything you want to add there, Dr. Fuhrman?
Sure. Well, yeah, look, we're all going to die one day, I guess. We're never going to live forever.
Thank God.
and we have a job to do, and that's to get as much peace and pleasure from our life as possible, make every day be worth living. And for a person with I've seen people with cancer, people coming to visit them, consoling them, died before the cancer patients did. The people,
Oh my God.
in other words, the people with cancer outlived all their friends, and they're coming. So the point I'm making is, you don't live with we're trying to get people, no matter where they are in life, to fully enjoy their life, be grateful for every day, and think about how they can make every day have happy moments, and think about what they can love, like, and be grateful for, and having healthy emotions, and all the things you talked about. I'm agreeing with, but I'm seeing whether the extra challenge is having a person with a health diagnosis who's fearful and been upset by their potential shortened lifespan, to have them feel normal and less stressed and able to go on enjoying and living their life and making every day count, will then add to more years and more health to their lives. And we're all working on that together. It just, if I got a cancer diagnosis, I would still want to do the same thing in trying to make my life count and make the days I have in front of me be positive, be grateful, be loving, have good emotions, appreciate the world around me, the connection I have with other people, be kind and have goodwill for others, and enjoy as much of life has to offer as possible. So we're all working on this together, trying to help each other in this, no matter where we are. And that, and I think there's a lot we all can do, because we're raised in a society where being a big shot is the way people go after their own personal self-glorification and satisfaction. They think being a big shot and being important and putting other people down. And we realize that that's like eating junk food, and that the real connections we have is being able to have emotions and have and feel for things and care for the world around us and care for other people and show them love and feel for them and they feel for you and doing things that are fun with each other. And appreciating nature and the world around us. So I think that we're all trying to work that way to improve our health, get enough sleep, get regular exercise, have happiness in our day, be gratitude, have passion for living in life, and take good care of our health so we can enjoy the life we do have. So I think that putting that in perspective is all very helpful. And as you know, I also I don't recommend people take serotonin uptake inhibitors and drugs and benzodiazepines and all these drugs to relieve their stress, or use food or smoking or alcohol to relieve their stress. And I do have there are some helpful peptides and herbs, like you mentioned, theanine and 5-HTP and ashwagandha and chamomile. There are things that we use, SAMI and what do we SAMI and what was the other thing? Tryptophan, but saffron. I forgot saffron. That was the one. So there's some natural things we can help people with elevate their moods that don't have the side effect and negative potentials being stuffing people on all these drugs do. So yeah, we can help people in that respect. So yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with all that. We have to do this. I guess we're saying looking at the person's life in a holistic fashion, making them as happy and healthy as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much of cancer that is, and all disease that is directly related to stress, chronic stress inhibiting the immune system, and then leading to not only an inhibited immune system, which allows cancer and other chronic diseases or infections to kind of take hold in the body, but also to lead us to making poor choices. Right? If you're stressed out and don't know how to deal with that stress, and you have anxiety and fear, you're more likely to eat the processed foods or the sugary foods to try and feel better, or smoke the cigarette or drink the alcohol, or stay up late, watching movies that are, impacting your emotional state, and then getting poor sleep. And we know sleep is essential for helping the body heal itself from cancer. So everything we can do to reduce the stress in our lives and having daily practices. I have a daily gratitude practice. I have a daily meditation and Qigong practice. I have a daily exercise routine and practice, which also helps to the neurological aspect of the brain and body to deal with stressors better and to make you feel better. Neurochemicals, dopamine and so forth, that's released that help you feel better, make better decisions and choices for your food and your life. These things are essential. Dr. Francisco Contreras told me once, years ago, specifically for cancer patients who are stressed out about the cancer diagnosis. What he said, I thought it's always stuck with me. And he says, if you have cancer, you need to stop asking, why me? Why me? Why the cancer? Why me? You need to stop asking why me as a victim, and you need to start asking what for. What is this for? What is this diagnosis here for? What's it here to teach me? What's it here to help me with? What's it here to help me change in my life, my diet, my emotions, my mood, my job, my relationships, as you said? If you can change that perspective and start asking, what is this for? How can this help me? That can be a tremendous shift in how your perception on how you approach the cancer diagnosis. But then also, if your goal is cancer prevention, or you have a cancer diagnosis, one thing I found as well is that if you don't ever do the work to get to the root cause of any childhood adverse events, and we know the largest study that's ever been done on childhood adverse events has shown, 2 or more of these adverse events, whether they're traumatic, but it's a loss of a parent, it's someone going to jail in your family, it's alcoholism or addiction in the family, it's abuse, mental, physical, or sexual abuse. It increases cancer rates drastically. It reduces lifespan by up to 20 years. Increases heart disease. All of these diseases are increased if you have childhood adverse events that are never dealt with, meaning whether it's through, therapy, hypnotherapy, cognitive behavioral, you name it. There's a million kinds of therapies you can be doing. If you don't get to the root cause of those childhood adverse events and heal them through therapy, through forgiveness, through different practices you can do, then that's going to be the subconscious programming that's constantly leading to that stress and anxiety and poor decisions in life. And so I think it's essential. I think it's essential we all do that deeper work, find a great therapist, find a great coach, find someone that can help you deal with and heal and transform any childhood adverse events. Because I think all of us have them. I certainly have done a lot of work on all of my, traumas. And had I not done that work, I wouldn't be doing this work today, right? I wouldn't be able to help other people had I not gone through the years of the therapy of helping and healing my own childhood traumas. And I just think that's essential.
Yeah. Dr. Flavin, you mentioned EMDR, but you didn't define what that was. I think the audience didn't get it. But so we're talking about there's other things the therapist can do with you to help give you relieve stress. But I just think you should say what that means.
Well, what is it? Eye movement, and what's the DR? I forgot what the DR was.
Desensitization.
Right.
Yes.
Where you're actually, this is an interesting therapy. One of my colleagues that I went to med school with in Germany is doing this now. She's a psychiatrist. And the thing is, she's been working with a lot of post-traumatic stress patients. And I met a neurologist from Florida who actually was recording with electrodes on the brain for post-traumatic stress, only to find out that it wasn't an acute trauma that they'd had in Iraq for the soldiers that were coming back. It was a deep trauma that was reactivated from the acute trauma that they had. So if somebody has a trauma from childhood or way back when, and then suddenly an acute trauma comes along where their oncologist says, oh, you've got cancer. And so suddenly it reactivates that deep trauma that's within them, and that the EMDR techniques can help to bring it to the surface and help to change its whole direction, which really surprised me. I mean, I did 5 years of psychology and 2 years of psychiatry, but I'll tell you the difference that I saw when the patient started doing this. And one patient kept going in and out and in and out of remission. And I couldn't figure out why the devil she kept coming, back again. Why isn't it going away? She's following the diet, she's doing the exercise, etc. And it was the trauma. So when she actually went into more therapy for the trauma, and some go to hypnotherapy, some go to different types of therapies. There are different
Neurofeedback too.
modalities. Yeah,
Neurofeedback is pretty good too. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my friends in Switzerland just took a whole course on neurofeedback. She's a physician, but she's also studied neurology, and the woman's amazing. And I did neurofeedback on me just to see how can I get my brain to slow down because it goes too fast. Mm-hmm. And I remember the friend of mine who's a therapist also said, visualize something in your life that was some scene that you really liked. So I was watching my brain waves going crazy, and I thought of a vision on the lake where I was living in Germany with the sailboats on it and the mountains in the background, and you could see all of the movement slowing down in the brain and relaxing. And it's amazing when you realize, and exactly like you're saying with the biofeedback's an incredible thing. And many of these methods, sometimes you just have to see which method works best for you.
Right.
I had one patient who was a hypnotherapist who could not get rid of her own breast cancer. She could help everybody else, and she helped all these other patients. And then she went to a weekend of Joe Dispenza, and by God, 1 week later, her breast cancer was gone. And they actually prayed over her and concentrated on her. And whether it's quantum healing or quantum physics or whatever you want to call it, 1 week later, she had no more breast tumor.
Yeah, so, Dispenza's work's amazing. There's a lot of people with that case, and they with those exact stories of all kinds of diseases, and they've actually been studying that scientifically, right, and taking blood tests before and after and during and monitoring EKGs and
it's amazing.
And so they're understanding exactly why and how that happens physiologically and biologically. I mean, it's a chemical cascade process that happens, when you're in a positive mood, when you're feeling happy, you're feeling grateful, you feel love and kindness, you literally are releasing neurochemicals that have incredible antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer properties. So, the more you can get into that state of gratitude and joy and happiness, do things that you love. When I tell people to exercise, it's like, if you hate going to the gym, then don't go to the gym. Find something else that you can do that you enjoy. Try tennis, try swimming, try cycling, try something else. Try something that gets you moving and active every day that you can actually enjoy, right?
Get a dog. Get a dog.
Get a dog, go for a run.
I got to mention gardening, because gardening has been shown to have lifespan beneficial effects.
Absolutely.
When we're talking about growing clean food and making regenerative organic agriculture, is that even just making just composting, making healthy soil, growing some of your own food, even growing a small percent of your own food has been shown to have beneficial long-term health effects.
100%. Dr. Bernie Siegel, so he told me one day, he said, I had a patient who came to me who was, I think he was given like a month left to live. I think it was something like stage 4 pancreatic cancer, some kind of really aggressive cancer at a higher stage. He was basically sent home to die. And, Bernie worked with him a bit with his mind and helped him try to get a positive mindset. The patient went back home. He comes back so Bernie thinks he's dead, right? He didn't hear from him for years. And all of a sudden his assistant says, hey, patient John is here to see you. And he goes, what? No, he's dead. He can't be here. And he comes in, and this is like 5 or 6 years later. And Bernie asked him, he said, what, how are you alive? What, you should be dead by now. And he goes, well, I went home and I stopped doing everything that was stressful. I just started gardening and eating healthier and just living a stress-free life. And I just forgot to die. And Bernie cracked it up and wrote about his story.
In the early parts of, like 75 years ago, we're talking about World War I, World War II eras. More than 50% of calories in America, people grew in their own homes. 50% of calorie consumption in America. They were called victory gardens because people wanted to be self-sufficient and not to stress the food going overseas. But the point is we could change our lawns. People could grow a lot more of their own food and make their own diet healthier. And, so we're talking about most people who have some land can grow healthy food. And also, even if you have an apartment, you can still grow sprouts and microgreens and have a grow box. And I also, by the way, recommend people get a Mayway kumquat tree in their house, in their living room, to do some gardening of plants inside the house. And as you were saying, Dr. Flavin, which I'll never forget your name, because I know you're flavonoids too. But the kumquat, you eat the skin of the kumquat, and the Mayway kumquat is a sweet skinned kumquat, and they grow indoors anywhere. And you can put them outside in the nice weather and bring them inside and they aren't little kumquats with edible. They're not bitter like the Nigeria ones that are shaped like an egg. These are round ones that are sweet, and you can grow them in your house and have these kumquats, which are shown to prevent skin cancer because the limonene is attracted to the skin and reduces radiation to the skin level. So the point is that it's fun to grow food and have some plants even inside that produce food for yourself and oxygenate the air and clean the air and actually involve you in caring for plants, which is all helpful.
Absolutely.
So the Mayway kumquat, for those interested, is MEIWA, and you can buy within a few years in your house, 1 or 2 years, the small plant you'll get for $20, $30. You'll be producing these beautiful flowers and kumquats in your house in a few years.
Oh, and they smell amazing. Like when they're flowering and then fruiting, like it brings this delicious smell. My mom has one in her house, and they fruit every year, and I go over and eat them when we go visit her, and they're just delicious and it smells amazing. And I'm gonna get one actually now. I'm looking right now. I'm gonna buy one to have it. I have a garden tower. Like if you don't have a lot of space to grow food where you're at, you can do garden towers or different kinds of tower gardens that are fantastic as well. I mean, we have basically like 2 8-foot garden beds in a single garden tower that's about 5 feet tall, right? And super, you can do this on your patio, on your, I've been a huge proponent of sustainability and self-growing food for years, because I think it is not only a solution to our health, but the solution to the future of humanity. If we keep allowing these giant corporations to dictate our food growing and food distribution, their number one concern is profits. And what that means is more chemicals, more destruction of the soil, more profits for them, which means less nutrients in the food, worse health for humanity. It's like we've got to take back control of our health and health of our food freedom. And the way to do that is to start growing some of our own food. So thank you so much for saying that. Thank you both for taking the time to be here and to share all this incredible wisdom and resources with our Conquering Cancer community. Dr. Flavin, if people want to get in touch with you and support your nonprofit, you do all your work through your nonprofit, which is amazing.
Exactly.
If people can donate to your nonprofit, they can learn more about connecting with you. What's the best place for them to do that?
Just CollMed, CollMed.org. COLL. It's Collaborative Medicine and Research, so it's CollMed.org.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I started it in 2007 when I had a stage 4 cancer patient with brain metastases, breast cancer, and 39 years of age. And when her cancer was gone in 10 weeks, I was so flabbergasted that diet, nutrition, detox, and frankincense could reverse a cancer. I realized I had to get this information out to the rest of the world, because I can't just say, oh, well, I know that, so what? It's an obligation and a duty. So, and then one more thing I wanted to point out, my colleague, Dr. Scheller, my late colleague, who was really a wonderful doctor, he said, if you want to help your patients, love them. So by loving your patients and sending them love, he said, very often cancer is a suicide. They want to die. And you have to really help to reinstate that love that they deserve, and that they learn to love themselves. And I think that this is a really important point, because it's something where when we start to realize I'm not being punished by God, I'm learning something, I have a lesson. That this is what I call tough love, right? God gives us these things, or whomever, fate, whatever it is, so that we can learn from them, not so that we're going to suffer and have a negative, but rather that we can learn from it. And then I always tell my patients, take this information and help someone else, help other people. It's not just for you, it's so that you can help other people to get well too. And I think that this is where the whole thing, where mankind works together in kindness and love, that we can all help each other in everything. And our future, as far as I'm concerned, for mankind is looking very good, because I am meeting wonderful people that are really out there to help their neighbor, their friends, their mother, whomever, they have cancer, someone else they know does, and they're helping them to change their lifestyle and change their eating, and so on and so forth. So I will buy Dr. Fuhrman's books too, because I want to know how to cook. Very good. Excellent. Thank you for all you're doing for mankind.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You too.
Yeah.
Pleasure meeting you and working with both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Fuhrman, I know you have your recipe books, you have courses and coaching, you have your retreat center. There's a lot of resources that people can gain by connecting with you, going to your website. What's the best website for people to get more connected to your work?
drfuhrman.com, drfuhrman.com.
Wonderful. And I have been out to your retreat center in California. It's beautiful. It's an incredible experience. The food's amazing, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's really committed and can go out there. Your books are great, and both of you are just huge-hearted, amazing, just incredible people. So thank you so much. So honored and grateful to know both of you and to have you both here sharing all this great wisdom with our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you both. Really, more we can do for mankind, the more mankind's going to do for mankind.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Everybody take care. Have a rest of your week. And we wish you so much health and happiness. We'll see you later.
All right.